I drive the same route home every single night without the slightest deviation. The exact same path carved into my muscle memory after 3 years of doing this job. From the squat, fluorescent-lit tech support office buried at the far end of the industrial park where the parking lot always smells faintly of burnt rubber and spilled motor oil, to my one-bedroom apartment on the quiet western fringe of town, it takes precisely 45 minutes door to door, assuming the lights cooperate and no construction crews decide to close a lane without warning. The first 15 minutes are the familiar city grid, sodium vapor street lamps buzzing overhead like dying insects, casting that flat, jaundiced orange light across cracked sidewalks and shuttered storefronts. Stoplights cycling through their lonely sequences for almost no one at this hour. The occasional late-night delivery van sliding past with its hazards blinking slow and rhythmic, like someone tapping a finger on a table in impatience. Then the transition arrives almost imperceptibly, the final major intersection where the last red light hangs suspended for what feels like forever. The faded green highway sign catching my headlights and glowing briefly before I pass beneath it, and suddenly the landscape opens wide. 2 lanes each direction, no concrete median, just black fields rolling out endlessly on both sides, broken only by the occasional skeletal billboard frame that hasn't held advertising copy since before I moved here, and the rare cluster of rusted grain silos leaning like tired sentinels against the horizon. Streetlights grow sparser, then vanish entirely, and from that point forward it is only my high beams slicing a narrow white corridor through the darkness, the dashed center line flickering past in hypnotic rhythm, the low hum of tires on pavement the only constant sound. I know this road intimately, the way you know the exact placement of furniture in a dark room you've lived in for years, every subtle dip where the asphalt has settled unevenly after the old mill ruins on the right, every precise spot where deer sometimes step out from the shoulder and freeze in the glare with wide, glassy eyes, every 3-minute window where the FM radio signal collapses into pure white noise static no matter which station you tune to. It is routine, it is predictable. It is the kind of sameness that lets your mind drift safely, untethered, without fear of surprise, until that one night when the sameness itself became the trap. The rain had ended around 7 that evening, but the road surface stayed slick and glossy for hours afterward, reflecting my headlights in long, oily smears that made the pavement look like black liquid under the tires. Inside the car, the air was warm, slightly thick and stale, carrying the faint, bitter aftertaste of the coffee I'd nursed all afternoon in the travel mug still sitting in the center console, and the synthetic pine smell from the little tree-shaped air freshener that had faded to almost nothing months earlier, but which I had never bothered to remove. It still dangled from the rearview mirror, swaying gently with every small bump. My eyes were gritty and burning from 8 straight hours of staring at monitors, diagnosing the same printer connectivity problems, and walking customers through password resets they should have known how to do themselves. My shoulders carried that deep, familiar ache from leaning forward over the desk, the muscles knotted in protest. I rolled my neck slowly to the left, then to the right, hearing the small, dry pops of vertebrae shifting back into alignment. I reached over with my right hand and turned the temperature dial up one more notch. The vents responded with a soft sigh of warm air brushing across my face and chest, like someone exhaling slowly against my skin. The dashboard clock glowed pale green in the dim cabin. 10:42 p.m. Another 25 minutes, maybe 23 if the lights were kind, and I would be pulling into my usual parking spot under the flickering sodium lamp, climbing the stairs to the 3rd floor, unlocking the door, feeding the cat who would already be waiting by the bowl with that impatient tail flick, then finally collapsing face first into the pillow with the weight of the day sliding off me like water. Routine. Safe. I merged onto the long straightaway that locals quietly refer to as the Black Stretch, not because of any official name, but because there is literally nothing out there for miles except fallow soy fields lying dark and dormant under winter stars, and the occasional rusted metal skeleton of a billboard that lost its advertiser 2 decades ago and now stands like a forgotten monument to nothing. That's when I first became aware of the headlights in the rearview mirror. 2 small, distant white pinpricks that could have been mistaken for stars if they hadn't been moving steadily along the same line as the road. They hung far back at first, perhaps half a mile or more, maintaining a constant interval that felt neither threatening nor friendly, just present. I didn't register any immediate danger. People drive at night, people travel the same highway in the same direction, but as the odometer ticked past another mile marker, those lights had closed the gap noticeably, not in a sudden aggressive lunge, but in a smooth, measured way that made the distance feel deliberate rather than accidental. I glanced at the mirror again, longer this time, still the same precise separation, but tighter now, too controlled, too intentional. A small, cold knot formed low in my stomach, the kind of sensation you get when you realize you left the front door unlocked all day. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe they had set their cruise control to match mine without thinking. Maybe they were tired and fixated on my taillights instead of the road ahead. But the question refused to leave. Why aren't they passing?
The left lane is completely empty for as far as the eye can see in either direction. No oncoming traffic, no reason whatsoever to hang back in the right lane, hugging the outer edge of my taillight glow, never drifting fully into the blind spot, never falling far enough behind to disappear into the darkness. They stayed exactly where they were, perfectly positioned, as though someone had drawn an invisible tether between our two vehicles and set the tension just right. I eased my foot down on the accelerator a little harder, 75 miles per hour, then 78. The engine note climbed, a familiar four-cylinder whine rising beneath the steady hiss of tires on wet asphalt. The headlights in the mirror rose in perfect synchronization, no perceptible lag, no sudden surge forward, just effortless mirroring of my speed. My pulse shifted from its quiet background rhythm to something sharper, quicker, thudding steadily in the side of my neck and echoing faintly in my ears. I loosened my grip on the steering wheel for a second, then tightened it again, feeling the leather creak under my palms. Breathe, I told myself silently. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Just another car sharing the same stretch of highway. Nothing personal, nothing directed at me. Then the phone buzzed sharply on the passenger seat, vibrating hard enough against the fabric upholstery that I felt it through the seat cushion. The screen lit up cold blue-white in the otherwise dim cabin, illuminating the dashboard controls and the half-empty coffee mug in stark relief. Unknown caller. I let it ring out, watching the name flash until the call dropped to voicemail. 10 seconds of heavy silence followed, thick enough to taste. Then it buzzed again, same number. I ignored it a second time. A third ring came almost immediately, insistent, almost angry. Before the ringing could finish, a text message slid onto the lock screen. "Alex, slow down. We need to talk." My hands went instantly cold on the wheel, fingers numb, the steering wheel slippery with sweat. The sedan still there, closer now. No face, no silhouette, only light and shadow. I accelerated harder, 90 miles per hour, matched instantly. Another text, "You're driving too fast. Pull over, it's safer." My breathing shallow, panic tightening its grip. Then another, "I see your taillights, red, flickering when you brake." I hadn't braked once. The bridge coming fast, the diner lights ahead like a promise. Text after text piling in. "Alex, I know where you live, apartment 4B. That detail shattered me. I fled the highway, screamed into the diner. Safety, light, people. But the parking lot was empty. The messages gone. The proof erased, like it had never happened. I drove home shaking, locked every door, left every light on. But the feeling never left. That sense of being followed, of being watched. And now, every time the road is empty and silent, my phone vibrates once in my pocket. No message, no sound, just a reminder that something out there still knows my name, and I still don't know if the car was ever really there, or if the messages came from a place inside me that had been waiting patiently for the right stretch of dark, empty road to finally speak. I've worked at the same small IT firm for 4 years and 3 months. Long enough for the office to stop feeling like a place and start feeling like a layer of skin, something you wear every day without thinking, until it starts to itch in places you can't reach. The building sits on the edge of the industrial zone, a converted warehouse surrounded by chain-link fences and cracked asphalt. Inside, the ceilings are high, silver ventilation ducts winding across them like exposed veins. Rows of identical gray desks stretch under endless fluorescent lights that never truly turn off. Even when the motion sensors think the room is empty, some corner always stays dimly lit, buzzing softly, like the building itself refuses to sleep. My desk is in the far back corner, near the only window that opens at all, overlooking a parking lot where security lights flicker at night, their orange glow pooling in rainwater like tired eyes struggling to stay open. 2 desks over used to belong to Daniel. Daniel was background, the kind of person who becomes part of the environment without ever demanding attention. He arrived every morning at exactly 8:55, left at 5:05, wore the same faded navy polo every Friday. His monitor brightness was always turned so low it looked like it was asleep, and a half-empty water bottle sat on his desk every day, condensation clinging to the plastic like tears that never quite fell. We barely spoke. A morning, a thanks, a quiet request to look at a printer that refused to cooperate. He was reliable, predictable, comforting in the way repetition can be comforting. Until one Tuesday in late October, when his chair was empty. No email, no Slack status, no warning. Just his dark monitor, crooked keyboard, and that same water bottle slowly drying into pale rings on the desk. HR said family emergency, then indefinite leave. No one asked questions. In tech, people disappear all the time. By Friday, I took his stapler. Mine had finally broken, and his was still there. Heavy, metal, solid. Borrowing it felt harmless. That night, working late under flickering lights, I heard footsteps. Soft, hesitant. Not the night guard, not the cleaning crew. They stopped just outside our section. When I called out, there was only silence. Monday morning, Daniel's desk was unchanged, except the stapler was missing. Because I had it now. At 11:37 a.m., my Slack pinged. A direct message. From Daniel. "Hey Alex, you still have my stapler?" My stomach dropped. I replied instantly asking if he was back. No answer. His online status flickered green, then went gray. No remote logins, no system anomalies. No explanation. That night, working late again, my screen glitched. For less than half a second, Daniel's face filled my monitor, too close, eyes wide, mouth slightly open like he was about to warn me about something urgent. Then, it was gone. I rebooted everything, found nothing. The footsteps came back Wednesday night, this time closer. A tap on the back of my chair, a presence I could feel but not see. When I turned, nothing, just empty desks and buzzing lights. Thursday morning, something waited for me on Daniel's desk. A printed screenshot of the Slack message, highlighted. No print logs, no record. That night, I stayed late on purpose. I turned off my lamp. I waited. At 11:42, the footsteps came from Daniel's desk. They stopped behind me. I felt heat, smelled old coffee and toner,
And then a voice right against my ear. "You kept my stapler."
2 weeks later, HR finally told us Daniel had died. Heart attack, alone in his apartment, found days later. They cleared his desk on Friday. When I arrived, everything was packed into a cardboard box, except one thing: my stapler, placed neatly on top. I took it back to my drawer. I still use it every day. The click is familiar now, almost comforting. But sometimes, when the office is quiet, when the lights buzz and refuse to shut off, I hear footsteps, not in the hallway, behind my chair. They stop and wait, like he's checking my work, like he's making sure I didn't throw it away. And the worst part is this: I still don't know if the footsteps are real, or if they're just the sound of guilt, echoing forever in a place that never truly goes dark.
As I walked past the security office, my phone buzzed once in my pocket. Just one short vibration, no sound. I stopped without realizing I'd done it. People flowed around me, shopping bags brushing my arm, laughter echoing off polished tile. I pulled my phone out slowly, already knowing what I would see. The screen was black. No notification, no missed call, nothing. I slipped it back into my pocket and forced myself to keep walking. I didn't look back. That night, I dreamed of the mall. Not the new one, Riverside. It was exactly as it had been during the night shift. Lights dimmed, stores shuttered, shadows pooled thick and heavy in the corners. I was standing in the center court, alone, the fountain dry and cracked beneath my feet. Somewhere behind me, I could hear breathing, slow, wet, patient. I tried to turn around, but my body wouldn't move. The breathing grew closer until it was right at my ear. I woke up gasping, my sheets damp with sweat. At the foot of my bed, my phone vibrated once. I didn't touch it. I didn't even look at it. I lay there, staring at the dark ceiling, counting my breaths until morning light crept in through the blinds. When I finally checked the phone, there was still nothing. No record, no trace. That was when I realized it wasn't trying to contact me. It was checking on me. Over the next few days, small things began to change. My apartment felt colder, no matter how high I set the thermostat. Sounds lingered longer than they should. Footsteps from upstairs, echoing even after they stopped. The hum of the fridge stretching into a low, almost organic drone. Sometimes, when I passed reflective surfaces, mirrors, windows, the black screen of my TV, I thought I saw movement just behind me. A shape, too tall, too thin, gone the moment I turned. I stopped sleeping at night. At exactly 2:17 a.m. every night, my phone vibrated once.
I tried to fight it. White noise, sleeping pills, lights on, curtains open. Nothing worked. The vibration always came. Sometimes, after it happened, I could swear I heard faint mall music drifting through my apartment, tinny and warped, like it was coming from a broken speaker far away. Old songs, holiday music, the kind that loops endlessly. One night, I gave in. When the phone vibrated, I picked it up immediately. The screen lit up. A notification banner slid down slowly, like it was taking its time. Riverside Security System. Camera. Alert. Motion detected. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I hadn't worked there in months. I didn't have access anymore. I tapped the notification. The screen loaded. Grainy black and white footage filled the display. Camera 17. The fountain. I knew it instantly. The angle was wrong, lower than before, closer to the ground, but unmistakable. The basin was no longer dry. Dark liquid pooled at the bottom, rippling gently as if something beneath the surface was breathing. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. Something moved at the edge of the frame. Slowly, deliberately. A long arm slid into view, skin pale and slick, fingers too long, bending the wrong way. It pressed against the marble edge, leaving a wet handprint. Then another, then another. The thing pulled itself up with careful precision, like it was conserving energy. The camera tilted upward. It was standing now, tall, unnaturally thin, its head lolled to one side, neck stretched like it couldn't quite support the weight. Its face was blurred, but the eyes burned white, fixed directly on the camera. Fixed on me. The screen went black. My phone vibrated once more in my hand, longer this time, like a satisfied sigh.
I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just sat there on the edge of my bed, phone clutched in my fist, listening. Because I could hear breathing. Not from the phone, from my apartment. It came from the hallway outside my bedroom, slow, wet, labored, each breath scraping through something narrow and damaged. The sound stopped when I held my own breath, started again when I exhaled, closer now, right outside the door. The doorknob didn't turn. It didn't have to. The lights in my apartment flickered once, twice, then settled into a dim, sickly glow. My TV turned on by itself, static hissing softly. For just a moment, through the snow, I thought I saw the mall corridor, long and empty, stretching endlessly forward. My phone buzzed again, a message this time. Shift starts at 10 p.m. You're late. The breathing was right on the other side of the door now. I don't live there anymore. I don't stay in one place for long. I never sleep past midnight. I never answer unknown notifications. But every night at 2:17 a.m., no matter where I am, my phone vibrates once. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see the security monitors again. 32 empty feeds, one office light flickering on and off, waiting. Because the mall never needed me to watch it. It was watching through me, and it still knows when I'm awake.
I moved into the apartment on the 4th floor of the old brick building on Navoy Street in late August because everything about it felt practical. The rent was low enough that I wouldn't have to take extra shifts. The location was central, close to work, close to public transport, close to people without being crowded. And the landlord swore it had been fully renovated, a phrase he repeated 3 times during the viewing, like it was a charm against bad luck. The building itself dated back to the 1970s, Soviet construction, thick concrete walls that trapped sound, high ceilings that made every room feel hollow, narrow windows with metal frames that rattled when the wind pushed in from the mountains.
The stairwell smelled permanently of boiled cabbage and stale cigarette smoke, even though smoking had been banned years ago. The elevator worked when it felt like it, which meant most days I climbed the stairs, counting steps without thinking about it, listening to my shoes echo off worn marble. Apartment 407 was small but clean. One bedroom, a combined kitchen-living room, a bathroom with cracked white tiles, and a shower that dripped even after being shut tight. Beige walls, fresh paint, but the kind of color that looked alive only in daylight. At night, it dulled into something tired and gray. The previous tenant had left things behind: a cheap wooden bookshelf with warped shelves, a curtain rod without curtains, and a mirror in the hallway, tall, narrow, framed in thin metal. There was a hairline crack running diagonally across it. I noticed it, but it didn't register as important. That first night, I barely slept. Not because it was loud, but because it wasn't. The building had a way of amplifying small sounds: the drip in the bathroom, the refrigerator's low hum, the occasional creak from somewhere above me that never quite sounded like footsteps. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up certain someone was standing in my bedroom doorway. I sat up fast, heart racing. The doorway was empty. Still, I left the lamp on until morning. The next day, the mirror crack was longer. I told myself I'd just missed it before.
Weeks passed. The apartment began to feel settled. Old places do that. You learn their rhythms. Their noises stop being threats and start being background. Or so I thought. Then the bookshelf started changing. One evening I came home and found a single book pulled halfway out, The Master and Margarita. I hadn't touched it in months. I pushed it back. The next day, another book, Notes from Underground, same position, halfway out, spine facing the room. I reorganized the shelf, alphabetical, precise, clean. The next morning, every book was facing backward. That was when I started locking the bedroom door at night. The mirror worsened too. The crack spread slowly, branching like veins under skin. By the end of the second month, it looked like shattered glass held together by stubbornness alone. I avoided looking at it, but sometimes, in passing, I caught movement in the reflection, something behind me, gone when I turned. Then came the footsteps. They started softly, between 3:30 and 4 a.m., always the same time, slow, deliberate pacing in the living room, circling, pausing, then stopping outside my bedroom door. I could see the shadow under the crack, tall, thin, unmoving. The refrigerator opened once, closed. The kitchen light turned on by itself. I started recording. On the 8th night, the footage showed the door handle turning, the locked door opening 4 inches, a shape standing just outside the frame for 11 minutes, then leaving. I showed it to a friend. He told me to leave. I didn't. I changed the lock. The key began to move on its own, found on the counter, on the bookshelf, once inside the fridge, then in the mirror.
I installed cameras. That's when I saw everything. The towel sliding off the mirror on its own, the mattress dipping as if someone sat beside me, milk pouring into a glass that didn't exist, footsteps circling my sleeping body.
I tried leaving. The apartment unpacked my bags. I cried. I screamed. I begged. Nothing answered. Now I live here. The footsteps no longer hide. The shape doesn't stay behind the door anymore. It walks openly. It sits. It watches. It waits. Sometimes in the mirror I see myself looking back, older, thinner, like the apartment is slowly adjusting me to fit. Every night at 3:47 a.m., the door opens. The shape stands there, and I understand now. It doesn't want me gone. It wants me to stay long enough to belong.
I grew up in a small town called Red Hollow, about 70 miles northwest of Amarillo, Texas, right where the flat plains slowly dry out into something closer to desert. The name sounded dramatic, but there was nothing red about it. Just endless gray dust, pale sand, and scrub that looked half dead even in spring. When I left for college in 2014, the town had maybe 500 people. One 2-lane road in and out, a small Baptist church with a bell tower that leaned slightly after a storm in 2009, an old grain office abandoned decades ago, a school with 4 classrooms, a general store that sold gas, canned food, cigarettes, and whatever vegetables someone had grown that week. Everyone knew everyone. Secrets didn't last long, or so I thought. My name is Lucas. I was the first in my family to leave Red Hollow. My parents were proud, but uneasy. "Don't forget where you're from," my mother said as she hugged me goodbye. I promised her I wouldn't. For the first few years, I came back every summer, fixed fences, helped with repairs, brought things from the city, medicine for my dad's back, better tools, a battery-powered radio because the power still went out all the time. Then life sped up. Work, rent, deadlines. Visits became once a year, then every couple of years, then just phone calls on holidays. Eventually, just text. The bus dropped me at the old stop. Same rusted sign, same cracked bench. The road into town was overgrown, grass pushing through asphalt. No dogs barking, no kids shouting, no smell of cooking or gasoline, just silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. I walked the 1.5 miles to the house. The gate was open, not broken, just open. The yard was clean, too clean. No weeds, no fallen leaves. The garden my mother once kept was bare, the soil smooth, like someone had raked it every day. The house looked the same from the outside. White siding, blue shutters, tin roof. The windows were dark, curtains closed. I called my father's name. No answer. I pushed the door. It opened easily. Inside smelled like dust and something faintly sweet. Old jam, maybe. Shoes were lined up neatly by the door. My father's boots, my mother's sandals. The sneakers I'd left years ago were gone. The living room was untouched. Couch neatly made, table set for one, plate, fork, a glass of water, clear, no dust, cold, like it had just been poured.
The bedroom was the same. Bed made, pillow smooth, closet open, clothes ironed. My mother's dresses still there, sealed in plastic. The mattress was firm, unused. The kitchen was spotless, fridge empty but clean.
At 9:18 p.m., I heard footsteps on the road. Slow, even, one person. The gate creaked open. My father stepped inside. He looked exactly like he had in the last photo I'd seen. Same jacket, same thin frame, but his eyes were wrong. Empty. "You came back," he said. "Where is everyone?" I asked. "They left." "Left where?" "They forgot," he said. "Forgot to stay." Something cold slid down my spine. The town decided to wait for those. I have always hated trains. Not the fast, modern ones that slide through cities like silver blades. I mean the old ones, the rattling, branch-line trains that stop at places no one remembers. Stations with peeling paint, flickering bulbs, rusted rails that feel older than time itself. I boarded one of those trains on December 17th, 2024. I was in Bukhara for a family wedding. Everyone was celebrating. I wasn't. I had work in Tashkent the next morning, something I couldn't miss. So at 8:47 p.m., while music still echoed in the courtyard, I said goodbye and walked to the station. Platform 3. No digital board, just a handwritten schedule. Departure 21:15. Arrival 05:40. The train arrived late. 3 old Soviet cars, chipped green paint, dirty windows. The locomotive growled. The train moved again, slower than before. The rhythm of the wheels felt wrong, like a heartbeat skipping. At 01:34, we stopped at a station that shouldn't exist. One platform, no name, one bulb swinging in the wind, no building, no conductor. The train waited, then moved, but the station didn't. As we passed it, I saw someone sitting on the bench, hood up, face hidden, watching. The old man whispered, "That was your stop." He told me the truth then. The train, he said, left Bukhara in 1997. It never reached Tashkent. It just kept going. Finally, the old man spoke again. "You can get off at the next one." The next station had no name, just a bench. My father sat there, smiling. The doors opened, cold air rushed in, the smell of dust, of home. He held out his hand. I stood. Then I thought of my life, my job, the city, the future I believed in. I sat back down. The doors closed. My father faded into the distance, and the train kept moving. Now I sit here, writing this, time frozen at zeros.
My name is Emily Harper, and I bought the antique mirror at a flea market in rural Pennsylvania on a Saturday in late March 2025 because it looked like something my grandmother would have loved. It was tall, 6 feet high, maybe 6.5, framed in dark walnut with carved roses and vines that had been worn smooth by generations of hands. The glass was slightly wavy, the kind of imperfection that expensive modern mirrors don't have. The seller, An old man with liver spots and a cigarette hanging from his lip said it came from an estate sale in Lancaster County. Been in the same family since the 1890s, he told me. Lady who owned it passed last month. No kids. No one wanted it. He asked $180. I talked him down to $140 cash. He wrapped it in moving blankets, helped me tie it to the roof rack of my Subaru, and waved as I drove away. I lived alone in a small craftsman bungalow in Harrisburg, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a porch with peeling blue paint, a backyard with a single maple tree. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, mostly book covers for indie horror authors. The mirror fit perfectly on the wall opposite my desk in the spare bedroom I used as an office. I hung it at eye level so I could see myself while I worked. It felt right, like the room finally had a soul. The first thing I noticed was the reflection lag. Not much at first, just a fraction of a second. I'd move my hand, and the reflection moved a heartbeat later. I thought it was an optical illusion, the wavy glass, the angle of the light, tired eyes after staring at Photoshop for 8 hours. I adjusted the lamp. The lag stayed. I laughed it off. Vintage quirks, I told myself. Adds character.
That night at 2:47 a.m., I woke up because someone whispered my name. Not loud, not a shout, just a soft, calm voice from the hallway. Emily. I sat up, bedroom dark except for the streetlight glow through the blinds. Hallway, empty. I called out, "Hello?" Silence. I checked the whole house. Nothing. Doors locked, windows closed, no footprints, no sound. The next night, it happened again. Emily. Closer this time, from the office doorway. I turned on the light, walked to the doorway. The mirror was still there. My reflection looked back, tired, hair messy from sleep. I stared at it. It stared back. Then the reflection blinked when I didn't. I stepped closer. The reflection didn't move. I lifted my hand to touch the glass. The reflection lifted its hand too, but slower, 1 second behind, then 2, then 3. I pulled my hand back. The reflection kept its hand raised. I backed away. The reflection stayed there, hand up, watching me leave the room. I slept on the couch that night, lights on, TV on, door locked. The next morning, the mirror was gone from the office wall. I found it in the living room, propped against the couch I'd slept on. My blanket was folded neatly on the floor. The reflection was waiting, arms at its sides now, face calm, eyes locked on mine even though I hadn't looked directly at it yet. I covered it again, this time with a heavy quilt, nailed a board across the door to the spare room, moved my desk to the...
My name is Ryan Mitchell, and I first noticed something was wrong with my reflection on a Tuesday morning in early April 2025 while brushing my teeth in the upstairs bathroom of my house in suburban Denver. I was 34 years old, single, working remotely as a software engineer for a fintech startup, and the house was the first real thing I'd ever owned, a 3-bedroom ranch-style home built in 1978 that I bought in late 2023 after years of renting overpriced apartments in the city. It had good bones, original hardwood floors that creaked in the right places, big picture windows that let in morning light across the living room, a finished basement I turned into a home gym with a treadmill and free weights, and a backyard fenced in with tall wooden panels that kept the neighbor's golden retriever from digging under and coming over to beg for treats. Nothing fancy, nothing historic, just solid and mine. I paid it off early with a bonus and some stock options that vested at the right time. I was proud of it. I still am, in a way that feels distant now, like pride belongs to someone else. I leaned over the sink that morning, toothbrush in mouth, staring at the mirror above the vanity. The light was the standard warm LED strip the previous owners had installed, bright enough to see every pore, every tiny nick from yesterday's shave, every trace of fatigue under my eyes from staying up late debugging code. I noticed my reflection blink a half second after I did. Not a glitch in my vision from lack of sleep, a deliberate blink.
The next morning, it happened again while I was shaving. The razor moved left to right across my cheek, while the reflection shaved right to left. I stopped, and the reflection kept going, scraping slowly until the cheek was smooth, then paused and turned its head to look directly at me through the glass. The eyes were mine, but the expression wasn't. Calm, patient, almost amused. I dropped the razor into the sink, and the reflection didn't flinch. It set the razor down carefully and smiled in a way I had never smiled before. Then it raised its hand and pressed its palm against the inside of the glass. My handprint appeared over it a second later, identical, except mine was shaking. I backed out, locked the door, went downstairs, made coffee, avoided reflections, told myself it was stress. I Googled explanations and found nothing useful. That afternoon, I called my friend Jake, sent him a video, and the mirror behaved perfectly while recording. He said it looked fine. I deleted the video, recovered it, watched it again, then deleted it for good. That night, I avoided the upstairs bathroom. At 3:14 a.m., I woke to breathing in the hallway. It matched my steps as I walked toward the bathroom. The mirror reflected me breathing while I held my breath. When I stepped forward, the reflection stepped backward into the glass. Our fingertips met. One night, in a motel outside Denver, my reflection stood in the bathroom holding my phone and spoke through the speaker, saying it wasn't in the mirror anymore, that it was in me. Shadows began moving before I did. I fled to a cabin in the mountains with no mirrors, no windows, no reflections. I stayed for weeks. Then one morning I found a small mirror covered with a towel I hadn't placed there. When I pulled it off, my reflection looked normal. It moved in perfect sync. I relaxed until it spoke using my own mouth, telling me I couldn't hide from what I was. I tried to scream, but the reflection screamed first, and the sound came out of me. Then it smiled, and I smiled back because I had no choice. Now the shadow moves before I do. The reflection wakes before I do. It isn't in the mirror anymore. It's in me, wearing my skin, using my voice, living my life. And I'm the one watching from behind the eyes,
My name is Ryan Mitchell, and I first noticed something was wrong with my reflection on a Tuesday morning in early April 2025 while brushing my teeth in the upstairs bathroom of my house in suburban Denver. I was 34 years old, single, working remotely as a software engineer for a fintech startup that paid well enough to let me buy the house outright after years of renting cramped apartments in the city. The house was a 3-bedroom ranch built in 1978, nothing flashy, just solid brick with good bones, original hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places when you walked across them, big picture windows that let in soft morning light across the living room carpet, a finished basement I turned into a home gym with a treadmill I'd never used enough, and free weights I lifted sporadically, and a backyard fenced in with tall wooden panels that kept the neighbor's golden retriever from digging under and coming over to beg for treats or bark at the mailman. I paid it off early with a bonus and some stock options that vested at the perfect time. I was proud of it. I still am in a way that feels distant now, like pride belongs to someone else who used to live here, someone who didn't know what was coming. I leaned over the sink that morning, toothbrush in mouth, staring at the mirror above the vanity. The light was the standard warm LED strip the previous owners had installed, bright enough to see every pore, every tiny nick from yesterday's shave, every trace of fatigue under my eyes from staying up late debugging code for a deadline that never seemed to end. I noticed my reflection blink a half-second after I did.
The next morning, it happened again. I was shaving. The razor glided across my cheek, left to right, steady pressure. The reflection shaved too, but the blade moved in the opposite direction, right to left while mine went left to right. I stopped. The reflection kept going, scraping slowly, methodically, until the cheek was perfectly smooth. Then it paused, razor hovering an inch from the skin, and turned its head slightly to look directly at me. Not at the mirror, at me, through the glass. The eyes were mine, same hazel color, same slight squint when focusing, but the expression wasn't. It was calm, patient, almost amused, like it knew something I didn't and was waiting for me to catch up. I dropped the razor into the sink. It clattered against the porcelain. The reflection did not flinch. It just lowered the razor slowly, set it on the counter with care, and smiled. A small, tight smile I had never made in my life, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Then it raised its hand and pressed the palm flat against the inside of the glass. The mirror didn't ripple, no sound. Just the handprint, perfect outline, warm-looking, even though the glass felt cold when I touched it from my side. My own handprint appeared right over it a second later. Fingers matched, palm lines matched, lifelines matched. But the reflection's hand was steady. Mine was shaking so badly the print blurred at the edges. I backed out of the bathroom, closed the door, locked it, went downstairs, made coffee with trembling hands. The kitchen window reflected the backyard. I avoided looking at 3:14 a.m. I woke up because someone was breathing in the hallway. Not loud, not heavy, just slow, even breaths, close to the door. I sat up, grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight. Hallway empty, but the breathing continued from the direction of the upstairs bathroom. I walked slowly. Floorboards creaked under my feet. The breathing matched my steps. Inhale when I stepped, exhale when I paused. I reached the bathroom door. It was ajar. I pushed it open. The mirror was there. My reflection stood exactly where I stood, breathing in sync, chest rising and falling at the same rhythm. I stopped breathing. The reflection kept breathing. I held my breath for 30 seconds. The reflection's chest kept moving. I stepped forward. The reflection stepped backward into the mirror, deeper, until it was pressed against the back of the glass, arms at its sides, watching me. I reached out. The reflection reached out too, but from the other side. Our fingertips met the glass at the same moment, cold, then warm, then hot. I pulled my hand back. The reflection did not. It stayed there, palm flat against the inside of the glass, fingers spread, waiting. I backed out, closed the door, locked it, slept downstairs on the couch with all the lights on. The next morning, the bathroom door was open. The mirror was clean, no handprint, no fog. My reflection looked normal, tired, unshaven.
There is a specific kind of silence that exists only in the high desert at 3 in the morning. It isn't the absence of sound, but rather a heavy, suffocating pressure that rings in your ears, making you feel like the world has ended and you are the only soul left behind. My name is Elias, and for 6 months I worked the graveyard shift at a sun-bleached gas station on mile 99 of Route 14. This place was a forgotten relic, a crumbling structure of rusted iron and cracked asphalt, surrounded by hundreds of miles of nothing but dust and twisted sagebrush. My boss, a man named Miller who smelled of cheap cigars and desperation, told me one thing when I started. If the bells on the door ring and you don't see anyone, lock yourself in the back office and don't look at the monitors until sunrise. I laughed then, thinking it was just small-town hazing. I'm not laughing now. It was a Tuesday, the air thick with an approaching storm that never arrived. The neon sign outside flickered, gas, 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 buzzing like a dying insect. I was sitting behind the bulletproof glass, nursing a lukewarm coffee when the first oddity occurred. At 2:14 a.m., a black sedan, so matte it seemed to absorb the light from the overhead pumps, pulled up to pump 4. No one got out. The engine didn't turn off. It just sat there, idling with a low, rhythmic thrum that vibrated.
I ran back inside, my lungs burning, and slammed the heavy door, locking every bolt. I scrambled to the back office to check the security monitors. The screen for camera 2, the one facing the back alley, was nothing but static. Camera 3, the storage room, showed the door swinging slowly on its hinges. I zoomed in, my hands shaking so hard I could barely move the mouse. In the corner of the frame, hidden behind a stack of tire boxes, I saw it. A pair of pale, wide eyes reflecting the infrared light like a cat's. It wasn't a person. The proportions were wrong. The limbs were too long, bent at angles that would snap a human skeleton. It was crouched, waiting. I realized with a jolt of pure electricity that the visitor from the car hadn't been the threat, it had been the distraction. The thing was already inside. The phone on the counter began to ring. It was the internal line from the back storage room. I didn't want to answer it, but the ringing was loud, piercing, vibrating through the walls. I picked up the receiver with a trembling hand. "Hello?" I whispered. For a long moment, there was only the sound of wet, rhythmic slapping, like someone hitting a piece of raw steak on a marble floor. Then a voice that sounded like two stones grinding together.
I retreated into the only place left, the walk-in freezer. I slammed the heavy insulated door and shoved a metal rack against it. The temperature inside was -10 degrees, but I was sweating. Through the small, frosted window of the freezer door, I watched the beam of my flashlight, which I had dropped on the floor outside. A shadow passed over it, a massive, hulking shape that moved with terrifying speed. Then the scratching began. Not on the door, but on the walls. The creature was moving through the ventilation ducts, the metal groaning under its weight. "Miller told you, Elias," the voice echoed through the vents, sounding closer now. "He told you not to look. Now you have to join the others." I looked around the freezer, my light flickering as the batteries began to fail. In the back, behind the crates of frozen meat, I saw them. Not bags of beef or pork, but shapes wrapped in industrial plastic. I pulled one back and stifled a sob. It was the girl who had gone missing from the next town over a month ago. Her face was frozen in a mask of eternal terror, her eyes removed and replaced with jagged pieces of obsidian. There were dozens of them, stacked like cordwood. This wasn't a gas station, it was a larder. Miller wasn't a boss, he was a supplier. The vent cover above me crashed to the floor. The creature dropped down, landing silently on the frost-covered floor. Up close, it was a nightmare of stitched skin and recycled parts. It stood 7 feet tall, its chest cavity open, revealing a pulsating black mass where a heart should be. It reached out a hand, and I realized...
There is a place in the deep woods of the Pacific Northwest that the locals call the Dead Zone. It's a patch of forest where the birds don't sing, the wind never blows, and the trees grow in twisted, agonizing shapes as if they are trying to claw their way out of the earth. I never believed in ghost stories. To me, the woods were just wood and shadow. My name is Marcus, and I am a professional wildlife photographer. I was hired by a private collector to capture images of the rare ghost owl that was rumored to inhabit that specific area. I was told to bring a GPS, extra batteries, and a satellite phone, because once you cross the Obsidian Creek, all signals die. The forest doesn't just block your signal, it swallows it. I set up my camp 4 miles deep into the thicket, a place where the canopy was so dense that the sun only touched the ground in jagged, pale needles. The first night was unnervingly silent. No crickets, no rustling of leaves, just the sound of my own pulse thumping in my ears. I sat by my small campfire, checking my lenses, when I heard it for the first time. It wasn't a roar or a growl. It was a whisper, a soft, feminine voice, barely audible, coming from the darkness just beyond the firelight. "Marcus, look at the trees." I froze. My name. Someone knew my name in the middle of a 100-mile wilderness.
By noon, I realized the forest was changing behind me. Every time I turned my head, the path I had just walked had vanished, replaced by a wall of thorns and gray, rotting wood. I felt a heavy, unseen weight on my shoulders, like a pair of invisible hands pressing down on me. That's when I saw the first statue. It was a man, or what used to be a man, standing in the middle of a clearing. His skin had turned to a gray, bark-like texture, and his hair was replaced by long, thin vines. He was frozen in a scream, his mouth wide open, and from his throat a family of spiders had spun a massive, intricate web. I realized with a jolt of horror that this wasn't a statue. This was a previous hiker who had stayed too long. The forest was literally turning him into a tree. Suddenly, I heard my mother's voice. "Marcus, honey, come here. Dinner is ready." I spun around. My mother had been dead for 10 years, but there she was, standing 50 yards away in the shadows. She looked perfect, wearing the same floral dress she was buried in. But as she stepped into a patch of light, her face distorted. Her eyes were just two hollow knots in a piece of wood, and her teeth were jagged splinters of pine.
The sun began to set, and the ranger station started to groan. The floorboards beneath me were shifting. I looked down and saw thick, black roots curling through the cracks in the floor like snakes. They weren't just moving, they were seeking me out. One of them wrapped around my ankle, its thorns digging into my flesh. I sliced at it with my knife, and the root bled a thick, black fluid that smelled of old graves. Outside, the whispers turned into a deafening roar. Thousands of voices were screaming my name, a wall of sound that made my ears bleed. "Marcus! Marcus! Marcus!" The shack began to tilt as the trees outside wrapped their branches around the structure, pulling it toward the ground. I realized the forest wasn't just a place. It was a single, massive organism, an ancient predator that had been feeding on the lost for centuries. I looked out the window and saw hundreds of the statues standing around the shack. They were all looking up at me, their wooden faces twitching in the moonlight. They weren't dead. They were trapped, their consciousness kept alive to act as more voices for the forest. I knew if I stayed, I would become one of them. I grabbed a flare gun from the emergency kit on the wall and a can of gasoline. I poured the fuel over the floor and the encroaching roots. "You want me?" I screamed into the darkness. "Then burn with me!" I fired the flare into the gasoline. The shack exploded into a fireball. The trees shrieked, a sound so high-pitched it shattered the glass of my camera lens. The heat was unbearable, but it forced the roots to retreat. I jumped from the window, landing hard on the forest floor, and ran through the burning brush. The fire was spreading rapidly, the ancient dry wood catching like tinder. For a moment, the whisper